to this space because my parents really needed a parent coach. I love being called the teen whisperer, and it speaks to the understanding the inner teen in all the parents. Doing that inner work is often at least part of the equation for creating exactly what you and your teen want in your dynamic. We can be more proactive instead of reactive. And really that relationship in the teen years starts at the very beginning. It's this balance, it's this real beautiful middle path of being really loving, understanding, listening, meeting your teen, understanding what the stage is all about. It's about building a foundation they can trust, so they know that when they mess up, you're not going to blow up. If you do, you really take ownership about that because they're waiting for your patterns to evolve.
Welcome to Parenting the Now Generation podcast. I'm always so excited about my guests, but I think today's guest might be joining me from the farthest location I've ever had anybody chime in. Kirsten Cobabe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and talking with you.
Are you in Hawaii?
I am. Yes, I'm on Maui. Yep.
The most beautiful place on earth. Like, I'm so jealous.
It really is. We've entered rainbow season and the whales are coming soon. So I love winter now. It was never my favorite, but
It's so great. Well, I need to ask you about living in Hawaii. That will be a conversation for a different day. But I've been following you on Instagram because I think your insights into all the complexities of raising kids today, especially teens, you always seem to hit the nail on the head. And I love it. So, I mean, as I was reading about you, you're a former therapist, a quote, teen whisperer, which I love, over 20 years experience working with families navigating adolescence. So we're so thankful that you'll join us for 2 shows. And I wanted to start like at the core, okay? The core of everything starts with I think where we're going to go. The parent-teen relationship, especially during the teen years. What is at the heart of that relationship? How do parents navigate it? How do we understand when our teen is being defiant, why they're being defiant, how we can model positive behavior and cultivate longevity. But first, how did you get to this space? I mean, it's so complicated.
I got to this space because my parents really needed a parent coach. I love being called the teen whisperer, and that sort of came about during my time as a therapist. And I also think it speaks to the teen and all the parents I work with, understanding the inner teen in all the parents, because that's really the key to understanding your inner teen and quote, doing that inner work is often at least part of the equation for creating exactly what you and your teen want in your dynamic. And so, what could be considered, my husband and I both worked with teens forever. Instead of having our own, we decided to be with the teens that are already here. And so what could be seen as people that don't jive with my work, which I've actually never received this feedback, but I don't bring any story with me other than, I guess, my own lens of being a teen, but I'm not comparing it to my teens. I'm looking at all the teens I've known for over 20 years now, and the similarities and the magic and the struggles and all of that, and really offering all that I've learned in that time for the parents that are in front of me now. And even though the world has changed, the teen years are so they're unique to every child, but there's also these really important timeless pieces that if we can understand that, it's magic. And so I bring everything I've learned from the teens and the parents right up into the now with everybody that I connect with. And it's I think some of the most important work, because this is the age where they're just about to go. They're just about to fly. And a lot of parents feel like it's my last chance, and there can be this hovering or a heaviness or a rushing, and we don't have to do it like that. Whether you're an adult, a teacher, a parent, we can support teens in a way that extends and grows beyond what we were patterned by our parents. No matter how great they were, we're called to evolve this, and not in a tiptoey, like perfection performance way, but like you were saying, in a real way. It's about the relationship. And a lot of us weren't modeled the greatest relationships, and we learned a lot from that. And now we get to actually bring something different. And so my work came about, just I've always had a natural connection with teens, with children in general. I've been a nanny, primary caretaker for some kids. I've worked in summer camps, and yeah, I've been a therapist. I've worked in prisons and hospitals and with people that are homeless. So I've gone into every corner, every dark corner, and the teens just always kept calling me back, and they were the ones that wanted more sessions when I was a therapist, which is very rare, right? Because most
That
teens
is
are like,
rare.
oh,
I don't
they're
want
like,
to
I don't
talk.
want to talk to anyone.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to open up. But your perspective is so interesting, and I love that you meet parents, quote, where they are and when they need it most. This is, following your Instagram and listening to you for so long and all the little nuggets of information. I like the fact that you talk also about a parent, I'm a mom of three, stop taking the time to stop and meet their inner teen, because very few of us do that. You don't realize it as you're parenting and going through the motions, and life is literally punching you in the face every day, that you have this backpack of inner teen issues that you are inherently bringing into the current relationship. I mean, this is like a aha moment for me. I mean, do we have to recognize those to parent in a healthy way? Is it possible to be a healthy parent without recognizing our own personal teen issues? I mean, do we have to
It's a
start there?
It's a good question because I think it can get misunderstood, and some people might fall into the constant seeking, or I need to heal myself completely
Yeah,
before anything's good or something. And it's not the reality. We are healing because we're human. That's just what we're here doing. We're always growing, and that's going to be full of grief and big emotions. I believe that if we don't handle the hard stuff that's inside of us, we will hand it down. And so if it's okay if we've missed something, because that's obviously going to happen, the invitation is when your teen is rolling their eyes, swearing, whatever the thing is that's bothering you about them, that's the invitation. And
I
not to
love
fix your
that.
teen, but to tune into the moment and go, why does this bug me so much?
I just shared something from you this morning, and this podcast will air at a later date, but I shared something that you had posted, and it goes along the lines, the word invitation. When your teen is maybe being defiant or what you would consider acting out, maybe they literally are acting out. It's an invitation for us to figure out what's going on with them, but what's going on with us. Like, Kirsten, it's such a great way of putting it. And it's such it's a way that makes it easy for us to digest as parents, like on our personal ends too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a completely different framework, and it's more about accountability, and we can't expect young people to be accountable if we're not being accountable.
So, I mean, as we're raising our kids, we're all going to reach this point where our teens truly are, they're going through a difficult phase or a defiant phase, or it's a new phase for us as parents. How do we know when to shift from, being burdensome and, because I said so parents, to coaching them and navigating the time with them? How do we know when we need to make that shift, or how do we know how to make that shift?
There's a few ways to look at that. One is understanding true developmental stages, right? What happens at 13? What happens at 15? And, there's that piece with regard to brain development and all of that, which we know lasts well into the 20s. And there's also another lens of what are the natural horizons that are coming up? Dating, driving, dances,
All
parties,
the,
stuff
all
like
the
this.
things.
All the things. So there's a few different ways. And then also, if you're feeling nervous about an upcoming age or era or something, that's another horizon or dot on the map, so to speak. And so it might look different for every family. I wish there were more, and I've spent my life studying it and interacting with it and being with family. I wish there was more of that, because I actually think so much of this is a surprise for parents, because we're not growing up in community, or we actually don't even understand the stages of child development
Yeah.
and what's natural and necessary and normal and healthy. And so it all is just like a surprise, another surprise, and you're just being like slapped every day by surprises. And when we actually can have some anticipation, we can be more proactive instead of reactive. And really, that relationship in the teen years starts at the very beginning. And this isn't to say you have to have done that all perfectly. A lot of parents I meet are like, I've been getting it all wrong for the last 12 years and I need to make it right now. And it's about really getting real, right? There's not this perfect script or this one way, other than if you're looking for a one way, look towards authoritative parenting and understand love and limits. That's the only real, quote, quick fix I have, because it's actually real and it's proven and it's timeless.
Okay, so break
Yeah.
that up. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Authoritative parenting.
Right. So it's not over the top, it's not neglectful, it's not permissive. It's this balance, it's this real beautiful middle path of being really loving, understanding, listening, meeting your teen, understanding what the stage is all about. And then it's also the limits. So the love and the limits. The limits meaning healthy boundaries, appropriate, things that are age appropriate, knowing when to say no and when to let go a little bit. And so it's this blend of both, instead of full control, authoritarian style, or this permissive, neglectful sort of approach that sometimes can happen because parents are like, I'm tired and I don't know what to do and I'm just going to throw my hands up.
And I mean, it's also hard to navigate that when the world is changing time frames. So for example, like I would say a 13-year-old shouldn't do certain things, but the world has already made that okay for a 10-year-old. Even though it's unhealthy and it's probably going against a lot of psychology and what a therapist would say. So what do parents do? Like you and I had discussed talking about modeling healthy relationships as parents, but then also what does that trickle down to when your child has friendships, possibly teen dating? I mean, it's very complicated and it's hard to navigate. You know, now when you think of like your own upbringing, then you think of your family or values, you think of what the world is saying is normal. I mean, and I think, Kirsten, you even said that you had a story about this, a personal story that, you were willing to share.
Yeah, I would be happy to. And there's so much more to it, but I'll share the pieces and parts that are so relevant for any parents listening now that have teens. Everything you just said is really significant, because if we're not modeling and actually engaging with teens in a way that shows what healthy love is, then we're not setting them up for success. And so my experience as a teenager was, I actually had quite an idyllic first 7 years of life, and then it completely changed. And I was almost raising myself to some degree at that point. And before then, it was just completely magical. I was born on a farm. It was night and day. And this isn't to throw anything at my parents. It's to really bring to light this what you're talking about. And so I think stories can help with this. Basically, I was looking for love and connection and belonging, as all teens are and as all people are. It just even becomes more potent in the teen years. And so because it wasn't being modeled in the healthiest way at that moment, I still needed to fill that, so to speak, right? Because this is important. This is really critical for human beings. And I ended up in a relationship that was not at first, but became really abusive and scary. And the person was older than me, and so it was inappropriate. I was a young person. I mean, they were also a teenager, but it was inappropriate, not okay for a lot of reasons. And because my parents and I didn't have open dialogue, and because they were really busy and stressed, and I understand all that, we didn't have that place of talking about it. When I think back, that younger part of me might have been asking for help, asking for boundaries, asking for love, asking for connection, and I don't think they could hear that. And if they could, they certainly didn't know what to do. And so my invitation, if I could have in those moments with my parents, would have been, because I imagine they were scared. I don't think they were like, whatever, she'll figure it out. I'm sure part of them was concerned. And I was a quite strong-willed and sensitive kid, so it wasn't necessarily easy. But the invitation in those moments is like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. I need to find a way to really connect with my teen to be able to talk about this stuff. If we haven't figured it out before, that's on me, the adult. And now it's still on me to figure that out with my kid who's deserving of this, because I want them to have successful relationships with friends, with peers, with romantic partners, and with me as their parent. Because that is actually, the relationship you have with your teen is way more powerful than any rule or structure. I mean, those things are important, of course, but the relationship is the one that matters most. If I had known I could have told my parents I was scared or sad or missed them or loved them or wanted their attention or needed their help, it would have changed so much. And in some ways, I'm not upset at what happened, because I love my life and it's given me incredible insight into the the life of a teen and the life of a parent, and it's beautiful. And on the other hand, it didn't have to happen that way. I already actually had those gifts and abilities, and so it didn't. I'm all about sort of preventing unnecessary suffering and allowing appropriate struggle, if that makes sense. And so there's a way I think we can do that where we recognize in ourselves what's been unhealthy in our dynamics and relationships, bring the heart into it. So much of therapy these days is just all head. We really got to bring that heart back into it too. And we need both, not one or the other. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot more to that story that has pieces and parts about how, small towns can get interesting with who knows who and who's connected to who. I mean, this where it went, my story could be a Netflix
I was going
special.
to say it sounds like a TV show. Like I already can picture it. Like I'm building the
Yeah,
scene.
absolutely. And fortunately, I was protected enough to make it through, but it was a very, very close call. And there were certain things that if my home had even been in a different place at one point, when this person came back into my life uninvited, I would have become the poster child for domestic violence at age 20. And so thank goodness that didn't happen, because actually I don't feel like that's not my identity. I'm here to support people upfront proactively about this, including young boys. I think about the person I was with and what he needed and didn't get. And
Yeah.
I wish nothing but the best for everyone involved. Best case scenario is we all heal from the hard things and we raise amazing people, and we raise ourselves in amazing ways. And so that's my whole purpose on this planet, is to be with people if they feel called to my work, if we're a good fit. I'm not, I
Yeah.
don't push anything on anyone, but I am so here for it. And I've seen amazing things happen and come out of the most challenging scenarios, where children are, to your point, dealing with stuff that's way beyond what they're really should be dealing with. I mean,
Yeah.
childhood is sacred and it's worthy of protection, and their innocence is so special. And when we can have a full, rich childhood, we can move on to having a full, rich young adulthood and adulthood. And a lot of kids are missing out on those, whether it's dressing up when they're little or having a tantrum they have to work through, or it's when they're, running around the neighborhood, figuring stuff out with their friends, or whatever else, we might remember from our years in the 80s and 90s and what seems just fun and missing from
Yes.
culture right now. Though
Totally,
we
totally
can
missing.
still come back, even if that's not happening. We can talk more and specifically what that could look like for people.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Two things I want to say, though. I mean, that innocence that you talk about, it really is worth protecting. And even though the world is saying kids can handle more, kids should be exposed to more, why are we keeping kids from all of these things that they want? I mean, the reality is these things are harmful for children during these different stages of life that you started to talk about. The other thing is, Kirsten, if you're a parent listening and you find yourself resonating with your story, like, I think my teen is doing some in a relationship, or, or vaping, or doing something where I feel like I've lost control. All hope is not lost, because as you're saying, that relationship from the parent to child is sacred. It's the most important relationship. I think the comeback from these difficult scenarios is requires work and prayer and all the things, but it's
Yes.
never lost. Like, what does a parent do in that moment?
Yeah, really, I think surrendering. There's this level of allowing and effort, because yes, you're going to have to take action and work towards something. I believe it's the energy inside of us and the place that action comes from needs to be really clear. And it doesn't mean perfect. And I have to say that a lot, because I think so many of us grew up in that sort of perfect behavior place and we had to know the right answer. It's not about that. It's actually like, okay, say your kid's vaping or partying or whatever's going on. Instead of that reactionary, you can't do this and you're grounded forever and what were you thinking and how could you, and all this, realizing that they're asking for support whether they know it or not, right? And so you might have a kid, and it depends on who your kid is, right? They may need more one-on-one time with you, or they may need you to sort of have firmer boundaries. But either way, that connection needs to be restored. And a lot of the piece parents miss, I think, sometimes, is the lecture happens before the listening, and we can't expect teenagers to understand us if we haven't even leaned into understanding them and what they need. And so it's also reading between the behaviors and the things they say and recognizing there's some deeper messages there. And so an approach would be being really present and curious about it. Instead of like, you can never leave the house again, it's like, tell me about that party, that friend, what it feels like when you vape, smoke, whatever
Gosh.
that thing is. I want to really understand that. And I promise I'm not going to come down hard on you. I realize I might have done that in the past, or maybe I've been missing something, and that's on me. And if you'd give me the chance to show you that I'm going to show up and listen in a different way, because I really want to understand you. And I would try my best to really do that inner work inside, to clear that lens first, so your words don't come out sounding like a therapist or a script from Instagram, right? Because your teenager will be like, I don't trust this. And the thing I love most about teens is, and us humans in general, is we actually have that natural instinct, and I want to protect that in young people. I don't want them to override that. I don't want them to just think it's okay for their parent to say the script and that's good enough. I want them to want more from you, because that's the whole point. We got to get back to what's real.
I actually, as you were talking, I wrote the word trust and underlined it 5 times. Like how, what you're not saying, say, oh, everything's okay and I'm your best friend. What you're saying is create a safe, trusting environment where you are ready to listen, because the actions are not the be all and end all. Sometimes the actions are the symptoms of what's going on underneath. And so we're trying to get to the symptom so we can fix it and build a healthier relationship. So that listening action you're talking about is really about establishing trust, not saying like, hey, you're all right and we're BFFs and I'm a cool parent.
No. It's building a foundation, right? It's about building a foundation they can trust. So they know that when they mess up, you're not going to blow up. Or if you do, you really take ownership about that.
Yes.
And because they're waiting for your patterns to evolve. And I don't mean that in a permissive way, because I think there's a lot of things, teens aren't right about everything. They
Right.
have parents for a reason, obviously, and
Yeah.
they need boundaries and limits. What I mean about it is, they're calling us, they're evolving, so they're calling us into an evolution too. And that just means maybe I can do differently than my parents, and maybe that's okay. It doesn't mean my parents were bad,
Yeah.
but this is a different time, and my child's a different person, and clearly there's something going on here. And this can be little stuff, like I think it can be helpful sometimes even talk about the little things, because they matter, and your teens are tallying up those little things. So when they don't like what's for dinner, instead of being like, well, you have
Yeah.
whatever's said, like you just have to eat it, or this what's available, or you're so ungrateful, or children are starving in Africa. Instead of all that, it's like, oh, what don't you like about it?
Yeah. Gosh.
Let them have a preference. Let them have an opinion. It doesn't mean you're going to make them a whole 5-course dinner. They can cook for themselves. Maybe you're like, oh, well, let's see what else is. You can whip yourself something up, and maybe they're learning a skill there. And so instead of ruining the connection in that moment by being mad at them because they don't like your dinner, you're actually working with it, and now they're trusting you to handle what's a very little moment. And if you
Which
can't handle dinner, how are you going to handle when they're really needing your help?
Which goes back to that word, invitation. These actions are invitations, actually, to connect even on a deeper level, for them to grow and express themselves through the good and the bad and the mistakes. I mean, it's hard. It's hard as a parent because it's very scary. We'll get the call like, and I hear the parents' voices. I just not too long ago got a young boy whose parents discovered was accessing very inappropriate material, and they had told him, you can't do this and here's why, and they put parent monitoring. And you're so kind, Kirsten, because you'll stay with us for a second episode where we're going to dive into social media. But the parents took the steps to put parent monitoring and to block, and yet their young boy was going around all of that to continue accessing. So the fear that there was an addiction brewing, and it was completely overwhelming. We have to navigate all of that, but we can get to solutions. And certainly there are going to be moments where you need a clinician, you need a doctor, if there's a true addiction, if there is something that is just beyond what we can handle through the everyday parent relationship, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
But in the next few minutes, I'd like to kind of shift a little bit to, there is the parent-teen relationship, but then there's the parent-parent relationship. Those are different relationships, but yet you talk about mirroring and the fact that our kids are going to watch those parent relationships and those parent interactions, but yet they're different relationships. So how do we navigate that It's always actually been confusing for me because I find like I have way more tolerance for my children. And sometimes I'll be like, my husband, who's precious and kind, he's like the kindest man on earth. But I'll be like, we've talked about this 10 times. But with my kids, I'll be like, oh, it's okay. You know, you're my baby. It's just different. It's different.
It is. And I think I mean, of course, we're going to give children, especially moms. This is my whole group class this morning, actually, was about this. And moms are giving their kids a lot of grace, and they're having challenges with their husbands. And I get it, because we're like, come on, you're a grown up. And then we forget, again, going back to that inner teenager, it's like there's something in there that's asking for some support, and they're not connecting that this is an invitation, whatever the thing that's happening. And that can happen with both moms and dads. And it's a different relationship, and there's so many versions of this. I think the important part is knowing that your kids are watching. And even if you're pretending, they know you're pretending. Just like, you know, when your teen's lying, they know when you guys are lying. Like, it goes both ways.
So true. So true.
So I mean, we're all psychic. We're all connected. You're deeply connected with your children. I think it's important to remember, like, hey, we're not going to get it perfect as a couple, and we're actively aware of that, and so that we can hopefully see our blind spots and grow through them together, and so that we can show up as best we can for you guys, because you guys deserve our best. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to keep growing every day. And I think something that keeps us from growing in ourselves and in our relationships sometimes is the grief we know we're going to feel, because we're like, God, how did I miss that for so many years? Or why didn't I think of that before they were driving or dating or whatever that is? Or watching something on someone else's phone. Like, why didn't I think of that? And so it's hard to grow. And we're not always going to be in perfect sync with each other. Especially, I really want to point out how hard it is for families right now, because dad's gone. Kids are gone all day. Mom's gone. Like, everyone's gone for most families. I know there's a lot more homeschooling, which is amazing. And there's a lot of separation that we almost have to, like, quote, make up for in the small amount of time most families have together, not to mention maybe the pressures that they're feeling, whether it's financial or social or something. And so there's a lot on everyone's shoulders right now. And if we can extend some grace, like, don't care too much about your kids' grades. I mean, unless they really care, then work with that with them, and you know. But this stuff doesn't matter at the end of it. I try to keep an end of life perspective, because I find it helps me remember how magical.
What do you mean by that when you say an end of life perspective?
An end of life perspective meaning, like, gosh, if this is my last day, or if I imagine my last day, what would I wish I had paid more attention to or done differently? Right? And I encourage parents to not care about the things that really don't matter. And it brings us back to the moment, which is all we have anyway. And I know it sounds cheesy and simple, but it's real.
I mean, Kirsten, you are just, I mean, I love everything. I mean, I went onto your Instagram page just now so I can make sure everybody follows you at Kirsten Cobabe or at Parenting Wave, 2 different IG pages, but they're each filled with just, I mean, even as you hear Kirsten talk, you hear these sort of not even one-liners. They're like 4 words, but they mean the world. And you're very, very good at wrapping up such complex issues in such poignant ways. And so I thank you for taking the time to be with us. A time difference and world difference from Hawaii. And I'm so excited that you'll be following us and following up this podcast with another session on talking about social media and gaming and all sorts of interesting things. I do want to say that if you feel like your child is dealing with an addiction or a safety issue that's just beyond your ability as a parent, you must seek out, Kirsten, I think you would agree, a therapist, a psychiatrist. Go to your primary care physician if you need to call law enforcement.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to do those things.
We all need support, and some moments call for more. So yeah, it's better safe than sorry. That's why I love what you're doing. Safety is my most treasured. It's just, without it, there's nothing. So yeah.
And that's not a sign of failure. That's just, that's life. That's life. And we're all dealing with a very complex world and very complex issues. So Kirsten Cobabe, you are wonderful. Thank you so much. For everybody, go follow her, 2 different IG pages that I will link here. But also join us for our next conversation with Kirsten on parenting the now generation. Take care, everybody.